Good afternoon and welcome to FSMOne webinar event today. Electric vehicle has been one of investors' most favored theme in the past few years. It is undeniable that the world is currently on an age of transition, and the spillover of the Russian-Ukraine war has intensified the importance of energy security. Therefore, our topic for today is driving into the future with electric vehicles. We have with us today our FSMOne research analyst, Mr. Alvin Chew. Alvin is a CMSRL license holder, having graduated from the Monash University, Malaysia with a degree in business and commerce. As an analyst in FSMOne, he covers global Malaysia and Thailand markets. Without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Alvin Chew. Alvin, over to you.
Thank you, Joanne. So let's not waste any time. So hi everyone, this is Alvin from FSMOne Malaysia research team. Before starting, I would like to thank you all for taking your time off your busy schedule to join me here today. And without any further ado, let's start our session. Today, I'll be presenting our views on the global electric vehicle industry. Electric vehicle has been one of investors' most favorite theme in the past few years. It is undeniable that the world is currently at the age of transition. And the spillover of Russia and Ukraine war has exacerbated the importance of energy security, which will fuel growth towards the electric vehicles. Though fully driverless cars are still many years away, the transition towards electric vehicles and away from those internal combustion engines is a nearer term. The electric vehicle industry has been growing at an astonishing pace. Global sales of electric vehicles over the past decade has been growing at a CAGR of 60%. So global sales of electric vehicle, most notably the sales of electric vehicle has doubled from 3 million in 2020 to 6.6 million in 2021. The significant growth took place after the pandemic, where the electric vehicles industry rides on a technology wave in 2020. Meanwhile, the slowdown in sales volume for the automotive manufacturers due to supply chain constraint also contributed to more interest in EVs. The main contributor for such growth is nonetheless from China and Europe, while the growth in other regions remains modest. Despite achieving such an amazing growth, we still think that the EV industry is still in its early phase with a lot of room for upside potential. The most valuable component of the EV is its battery, and it is what powers the vehicle. Battery stood 40% of the total electric vehicles value chain, which is why companies such as Tesla, General Motors, Toyota, and others have begun making their own batteries. China, Japan, and Korea dominate the EV battery market, with less than 3% of the global demand is supplied from companies outside of these three countries. So there are a few types of batteries, and among them, the lithium-ion batteries are the most important battery as they are light, small, and can store a lot of energy. Additionally, most lithium-ion battery parts are recyclable, making this battery a good choice for ESG. The battery supply chain can be segmented into upstream, where commodity sourcing company come in place. Midstream, we have battery cell assembly and battery pack manufacturers who then supply to the downstream EV car manufacturers. So basically, how the supply chain works is that raw materials that is used in producing lithium-ion batteries are cobalt, lithium, and nickel. Raw lithium is produced in Australia, Chile, China, and Argentina. After being mined and produced, the raw materials are being sent to China, South Korea, and Japan for cell assembly, module production, and pack assembly before being sent out to all those EV manufacturers. First of all, we have the adoption of EV will lead to savings of greenhouse gas emission. In 2021, United Nations Climate Change Conference, also known as the COP26, countries are brought together and asked to come forward with an ambitious 2030 emission target reduction that aligns with the reaching net zero by the middle of the century and keeping 1.5 degrees within reach. Until now, some progress has been made to bend the temperature curve closer to 2 degrees, but it is still requires much more efforts to bring back to 1.5 degrees. So to deliver on these stretching targets, countries will need to accelerate the phase-out of coal, encouraging investment in renewables. Transportation alone accounts for 17% of the global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. In order to achieve net zero carbon gas emission, the world needs to switch away from fuel-powered vehicles as they have the highest carbon emissions. Although EV has no tailpipe emissions, the process of generating electricity to charge the EVs will create carbon pollution, as the generation of electricity today still relies heavily on coal and natural gas. However, to the extent that more renewable energy sources like wind and solar are used to generate electricity, the total greenhouse gas emissions associated with EV could be even lower. The figure beside shows greenhouse gas emissions over the lifetime of the EV is still lower than a typical gasoline car, after taking into account the emissions in the process of manufacturing, charging, and driving the car. Moving forward, we expect more robust growth for the EV industry. With complete free from fluctuations in fuel oil prices and tech-savvy driverless driving technology, the EV industry will continue to eat up market share of the internal combustion engine vehicles. Bloomberg alone is estimating 6 million car sales in China in 2022 as deliveries of new electric vehicles grew more than double in July to around 485,000 units, which is equivalent to 26% of the total new auto market. This figure is more than 2 times of the total new EV sales in China in 2021. And interestingly, China sold more EV than the entire world in 2021. In EVs, the small electric vehicles is expected to experience the most growth with a CAGR of 23% by 2032, and followed by SUV and large EVs. They are also predicted to make up of 23% of the new passenger vehicle sales globally in 2025. The cost-competitive battery prices will lead to lower cost of goods sold for car makers. Battery prices are the key for EVs to maintain cost competitiveness. The cost-competitive lithium-ion phosphate batteries are critical for automakers to keep EVs affordable while minimizing the blow to their profits as they battle for a share in the hyper-competitive EV market. Battery makers such as CATL and BYD's innovations to directly integrate cells into packs without modules has boosted the battery energy density, powering longer driving ranges. As shown in the figure beside, on the right-hand side, the average cost of the lithium-ion batteries has declined 89% since 2010. Although the surge of battery costs could drive up the price of EVs as battery price increased for the first time in many years, as you can see, there's a slight uptick in the current price. The battery makers are constantly keep competing to come up with cheaper and more efficient batteries, and the battery prices are expected to resume its downward trajectories in 2023. So government support to the industry will facilitate exponential growth. Country-wise, China and Europe lead the way in EV adoption as both are the leading nations in EV sales on the back of government support. Many country governments have also provided incentives to the industry, such as tax exemption subsidies for individuals who purchase an EV. So notwithstanding these supportive incentives by the government, we think that the main drivers of sustainable EV adoption will be economic rather than regulatory. It is evident that the government spending on EVs in the past has been bearing result. As you can see from the chart in the right-hand side, the share of government spending has been on a declining trend over the past few years as consumer spending started to pick up. Notably, in 2021, consumer spending on electric vehicles grew more than double compared to a year ago, while the share of government spending still maintained at 10% of total consumer spending. Next, we have the rollout of EV infrastructure. Nowadays, it's not tough to find a petrol station as they can be found like every few streets away. So this brings convenience to people as they are needless to worry about running out of fuel. So it is clear that to popularize the adoption of EV throughoutly, the access to public charging infrastructure will need to expand as well. So according to the chart on the left-hand side, both fast and slow publicly available chargers are on an upswing despite a slower growth recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. Moving forward, public charging stations will be popularized as government around the world has invested heavily in developing such infrastructure. And if from the chart, you may also notice that the slow publicly chargers are more than fast publicly chargers due to their lower manufacturing costs and installation costs. So the EV per charger ratio on the chart at the right hand side helps to assess the suitability of the charging network. So typically, when the number of EVs increases, the ratio of EV per charger ratio also increases as well. Although the EV industry has experienced a tremendous rise in terms of sales volume and market share in the past few years, there is still a lot of market share left to capture, especially in the emerging markets where EV penetration rate is lower due to fewer available models and those EVs are quite expensive. So in addition, the lack of widely accessible charging infrastructure and vehicle regulatory push also contributed to a slower market uptake in the emerging markets. Therefore, we believe that the decreasing EV prices due to economies of scale and increasing driving ranges in the future years, as well as the installation of more charging stations, will boost EV industry in the emerging markets. So the Bloomberg Electric Vehicle Index is currently priced as 4,042 as of 29 August, and is trading at 30% below its peak. So trading at a 17.88 times price earning ratio based on the 2024 earnings, we arrive at a target price of 6,100, which translates into an upside potential of 50.9% by 2024. Although there are a few different benchmarks for the electric vehicle, we decided to use the Bloomberg Electric Vehicle Index as it allows investors to gain exposure to the entire supply chain of the global electric vehicle industry. So we are positive on the global electric vehicle market based on the aforementioned reason. Although we cannot rule out of the risk of higher interest rate affecting valuation of the industry and inflationary pressures squeezing the car manufacturers' profit margins, we think that the global electric vehicle market is currently trading at very attractive valuations with promising future growth drivers. To tap into the global EV boom, investors can consider investing in the Clean Shares Electric Vehicles Future Mobility Index ETF with the ticker symbol CARS, KARS. This is an all-rounder ETF that covers all parts of the electric vehicle supply chain. From upstream commodity sourcing, we have the Albemarle Corp, which is a lithium mining company, to midstream battery pack assembly and manufacturing company. We have names such as CATL, the contemporary Amperex technology, and downstream we have car makers such as Tesla and NIO. It tracks the performance of the Bloomberg Electric Vehicle Index, providing investors with access to companies critical for the development of EV all around the world. And China, and from the chart on the right-hand side, you can see that China and United States are the heaviest weighted countries in the ETF. This is because most of the leading players in the EV supply chain are listed in these countries. China has some of the best EV battery makers, such as CATL, and they supply to car makers all around the world. Also, the common holdings with the MSCI All Country World, excluding cars index, is with this ETF is 2.7%, which makes it a good diversification choice for investors to have it in their portfolio. So until now, we are clear that China is a major contributor for the growth in the EV sector. So for the remaining part of the webinar, we look to dive deeper into the Chinese EV industry. The electric vehicle industry has been one of the most promising industry in China, with a forecasted penetration rate of 60% by 2030. EV manufacturers saw record sales in Q1 and in June. Despite the lockdowns in April and May, electric vehicles grew by 80% year-over-year during the first half of the year, led by names such as BYD and Tesla. In May alone, BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, became the top EV sales seller globally, dethroning Tesla. And XPeng and Li Auto also saw sales growing 124% and 100% respectively during the first half. So you also, if you have been to China's, especially Shenzhen, in the past few years, in the recent few years, especially even before the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, you may notice that all the taxis in the road are from BYD, and this shows how the Chinese government has been very actively in promoting this EV. So as shown earlier, the sales of new EV in China could reach 6 million by the end of this year, and this would be a roughly 100% increase from 2021. Moving forward, we are expecting that the sales in the affordable EV segment, where the players such as BYD, Li Auto, and XPeng will continue to dominate the space. So one of the factors that caused such fast growth was the heavy investment by the Chinese government. The China-US joint statement on climate change in 2013, the Paris Agreement in 2015, and the issuance of the 14 5-year plan in 2021. And all of this has pointed towards one direction, which is a transition towards renewable energies and focus on greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So in line with these measurements, the Chinese government has vigorously supports the development of EV industry through the car purchase subsidies and other means. Since 2009, 200 billion renminbi in subsidies were provided to EV consumers, but direct aid was supposed to end in 2020. So from 2020 to 2022, China's subsidies dropped annually by 10 to 30%, paving a way to phase out subsidies and allow organic consumer demand to grow. However, to help the electric vehicle sales to rebound in 2020, the central government has extended the monetary incentives as well as prolonged the purchase tax exemptions on EV throughout 2022. Moreover, China has this EV credit score system, which punishes the production of fossil fuel cars and reward the production of EVs. So it has become one of the most successful policies globally in incentivizing EV production. This allows car makers to even willing to sell their EV below cost, as long as the revenue from the selling carbon credits can make up for the deficit. So all the government efforts had led to the robust growth in the EV industry. Despite expectation of government support might be phasing out soon, EV sales in China is still expected to grow rapidly, with sales forecasted to grow exponentially to reach 27 million units sold in 2040. In terms of the global EV market share, at the chart on the right-hand side, Tesla is still far ahead of other automotive group with over 21.6% of market share in the first half of 2022. Although it's still up compared to 2021, its market share decreased in the past few years from 23% in 2019. SAIC is the second largest group thanks to the sales of its mini EVs. The top two companies remain the same, but we can see that BYD overtook Volkswagen in terms of market share of EVs sold in the first 6 months of 2022, showing a strong demand for the Warren Buffett's favorite EV maker. The other reason that we think that why China is the most promising country for EV growth is that China has a strong position in the battery industry. China is the world's largest supplier in the battery industry, and over half of the lithium, cobalt, graphite processing and the refinery capacity is located in China. China accounted for 47% of the total EV battery market share, up from 39% in 2021. As you can see from the top 5 EV battery maker brands in the world, 2 of them are from China. The CATL's battery market share grew from 32.5% in 2021 to 35% in the first half of 2022. So beyond the production volume, the technologies used and the quality of the Chinese batteries are not inferior compared to the developed countries. So numerous international renowned car brands choose Chinese companies as their battery suppliers. And this is why the market share of the Chinese EV battery maker saw a significant growth. CATL, for example, became the battery supplier for Volkswagen in March 2018 and received USD 1 billion from BMW 3 months later. So, but then in the February 2020, CATL became one of the battery suppliers for Tesla. So meanwhile, BYD also saw an insane growth, up from 6.9% of total market share of battery market share in 2021 to 12% in the first half of 2022. So China is also the home for many rare earth materials in the EV battery industry. In 2021, China accounts for 1.5 million tons of lithium, accounting for 6.8% of the market size globally. Although the world's largest lithium mines are mainly located in South America and Australia, Chinese companies hold a great number of shares of them. So for example, for instance, the China's lithium Tianqi Lithium Corporation holds 51% shares of Terison, which owns the largest lithium mine in Australia. Meanwhile, China is also the top 6 country that owns the largest global nickel reserve. So it is no doubt that China is processing abundant of rare earth materials for batteries, which will provide the local battery makers cheaper access to raw materials. However, similar to the global EV market, it's not all rainbow and sunshine for the China EV industry. The prices of major battery components such as lithium, nickel, and cobalt has all risen in the past year. This is largely exacerbated by the supply chain disruption due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And a jump in battery raw material prices, especially in lithium, will increase the cost pressure on battery manufacturers. As you can see from the chart on the left-hand side, the downstream battery makers are pressured to digest their higher costs. China domestic brands gross margin dipped 19% in the first quarter of 2022 compared to the previous quarter. Moreover, the power rationing in China in response to a recent high summer temperatures of about 40 degrees or even higher has led to a lithium production in the country coming under pressure. Several major lithium producers in Sichuan have either suspended production or lowered their operating rates in response to the power crunch, leading to more constraint of lithium supplies. So from the chart, from the graph on the right-hand side, you can see that the prices of lithium carbonate remains elevated at high prices. However, as mentioned earlier, we think that a situation of short supply and higher lithium prices is short-lived, and the competitive lithium battery producers will continue to push battery prices downwards. Overall, China is the leading nation in transition towards EV, and it is in position for a stronger growth. For investors who are interested in gaining exposure to a Chinese EV boom, they can consider investing in the Nikko M Straits Trading MSCI China Electric Vehicles and Future Mobility Index ETF with the ticker symbol EVS. This is an all-rounder ETF that covers all parts of the electric supply chain in China, providing investors with access to companies critical for the China's EV development. So interestingly, we see NIO, a company that is still not profitable, making into the top 10 list of the both ETF that I recommended earlier. This company is expected to continue making losses until 2024, which the loss-making company is almost delisted in the first several months of 2020, but it is now one of the Tesla most major competitor. So let's have a look at the case of NIO. NIO is a newly emerged technology EV manufacturer and is now the main player in market player in targeting high-end customers in China, the same target income segment as Tesla. So below shows the few car models of NIO, such as NIO ES7, NIO EC6, which is supposed to go against Model 3 Tesla, and then NIO ET5, which is also going against Model Y of Tesla. So as mentioned earlier, the NIO almost delisted in 2020, almost go into bankruptcy. So to turn around the situation in 2020, NIO reorganized its employment structure by replacing supervisors and lower-level employees with people in the automotive industry. NIO also learned marketing strategy and pricing strategy from global high-end brands like Mercedes, BMW, and Audi. So to build the image of the high-tech and also premium autos. So the new transformation enabled NIO to meet current preference of the Chinese consumers who are more keen on to the high-tech vehicles. So there are some unique features that are offered by NIO, which is why investors favorite NIO despite still being unprofitable. First, the NIO Power Swap enables NIO electric vehicles to use changeable batteries. The battery can be replaced once it is out of electricity in the charging stations. as well as at the end of its service life. So basically, users just have to drive into the power swap station and wait for like 5 minutes in the car to switch to another fully charged battery. So much more convenience than waiting for almost 30 minutes in the charging stations to get your EV fully charged. And so far only NIO has been able to develop this technology, not even Tesla. So aside from the normal power charger, NIO's Power Mobile act like a portable power bank for users who run out of battery in the middle of the road. They can just simply order the Power Mobile via the app in their phones. So in conclusion, the EV industry in China is still in a very early stage with ample room for upside potential. So below shows the valuation table for the Chinese electric vehicle sector. So based on the price earning for fair PE ratio of 25 times, we calculated the upside potential of 27.64% by 2024. So after this presentation, here are some takeaways. Yeah, the high fuel prices facilitate growth in EV sector, and in order to achieve the goal of net zero carbon gas emission, the world needs to switch away from fuel power vehicle as they have the highest carbon emissions. Going forward, the demand for electric vehicle is expected to grow exponentially, contributed by small vehicle and SUVs. Companies are also constantly innovating to produce cheaper and more efficient EV batteries. So despite a rise in lithium prices, battery prices are expected to soon normalize as they are the key for EVs to maintain cost competitiveness. Government support to the industry will convert into consumer spending on EV in the future. Rollout of EV infrastructure, especially charging station, will boost convenience of adopting an EV. And also China will be a big part of the global EV growth. So in short, supply chain disruption should be manageable as EV companies has been preparing for such shortages, and also record capacity will be coming online starting from 2023. Thus, we liken the EV industry based on the positive growth drivers. And that's all for today's webinar. Is there any, let's move on to the Q&A session. So yeah. So for the first question, we will have where is this ETF listed? So for the ETF from Crane Shares, both of the ETF are also listed in New York Stock Exchange, which you can purchase it through our website, and then our team will help you to guide you through how to open an account in our website. Yeah. So for the next questions, we have and what is the EV outlook in Malaysia? Okay, so I can't deny that the EV adoption progress in Malaysia is slow, but we are definitely on the right track. The government has been, the Malaysian government has been quite supportive so far, from import duties, sales tax, and road tax exemptions to we have also income tax deduction for owning an EV. So currently, there are various sandbox programs conducted by the government agencies and universities to test out the technologies and accelerate the technology commercialization. The government needs to adopt a more comprehensive policy to build an ecosystem with more reliable batteries and infrastructure. So despite that, we are also looking forward for the budget 2023, which is scheduled to announce in the start of October, for more information to gauge on the future of EV sector in Malaysia. Moreover, the electric vehicle infrastructure development guidelines is set to enforce in the fourth quarter of 2002, which is another sign that the government is actually paying a lot of attention in the Malaysia EV industry. So another question we have which of these two ETF offer a better value? So these two ETF are very it depends on which company you would want your exposure to be in. So if you want to capture the global electric vehicle exposure, you may consider the Crane Shares one. And if you are keen in just China only, the mainly China electric vehicle sector, you can consider the one from Nicole M. Okay, hope that answer your question. So what are the next question we have? What are the implications of the Inflation Reduction Act on the climate change that just recently passed on? Yeah, so the Inflation Reduction Act on climate change that just, I think, recently passed on 16th of August. And this act includes 369 billion USD focus on energy transition and carbon reduction, which represent the highest ever subsidy for fighting climate change to be introduced through legislation in United States. So in this legislation, there were various tax credit introduced to attract new EV adopters and motivating existing car makers. So we believe that the passage of this bill, which includes a tax credit for fuel cell vehicles and EV infrastructure, will put companies on a secular growth path for the next decade or so. So we also believe that this act will actually accelerate EV adoption in the United States, bringing EV closer to cost parity with the internal combustion engine vehicles. Meanwhile, the act will also elevate, we think that this act will also elevate US in the global electric vehicle market, which is quite lag compared to our global peers in recent years. As you can see, the two main leaders in the EV industry were Europe and China. So this act will actually put US into more competitive towards them. Yeah. So let's see what are the other questions on the ground here. We have this, if we are to invest in Malaysia under the EV green tech name, which counters we can pay attention to. So currently there is no funds or ETF mainly targeting in the Malaysia EV sector, but for individual stocks, they here I got some of the names in my mind, which are we will have Greatech. Greatech is a company that manufactures the EV packaging assembly line, and then we have also D&O, which makes the vehicle EV light for Tesla, and yeah, Tesla is their main customer. And then also we have Pestech, is a very Pestech that is I think is the only Malaysia company that makes EV charging stations. We also have JHM. JHM is a EV pack assembly that supports Geely from China, and also they supply components of EV charging stations to US and Japan. We also have Tawin. It's a manufacturer of cables for automotive components for Aptiv, which is also a global leader in the EV industry. Okay, so these are some of the names that I had in my mind currently. Yeah, so that's all. So next question we have, why is China still leading the EV market despite many countries' government also provide huge support for that sector? Yeah, this is a very good question. As you may also notice that a lot of countries also provide very huge support to the EV sector, but why is China so leading the world so much? So despite all the government tax credit or subsidies for the industry, the one thing that truly differentiates the China EV market growth compared to other regions was their EV credit policy, where car makers receive positive credits for each EV produced and receive negative credits for not producing a specified percentage of EVs in the year. So the criteria were designed so that most traditional car makers would have a negative total the credits at the end of the year, to avoid penalty in the form of next year reduction production cap. Car makers had to either make EV on their own or purchase the EV credits from other companies that other EV companies. So this has increased EVs production in the country, and some of the car makers are even willing to sell EV below their cost. So as long as the revenue from selling the carbon credits can make up for the shortfall. Yeah. So I guess that's all for the question. Due to time constraint, I wouldn't take any more questions. Yeah, so I hope you get something fruitful today, and we hope to see you soon in the future. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alvin, for the insightful presentation. Looks like we've come to an end of today's webinar. If you have further questions, feel free to send us an email at investhelp.my@fundsupermart.com. A replay of today's session will be available right after this on FSMOne Malaysia YouTube page. Once again, thank you very much, Alvin, for joining us today, and thank you everyone for attending. Goodbye.